Hi, I'm Eileen Roche, and welcome to today's episode of Between Friends. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm excited to share, my tips for binding. It's that last task you have to do right, at the very end of the beautiful quilt that you poured your heart in, whether that was piecing or applique or just a whole cloth quilt like I'm going to show you today. I'm working with a different set of cameras, so if my eyes are like kind of looking off camera and not at you, I apologize. But we are on the fly here today, changing on the fly. So the first thing that we're going to show is let's talk about the PowerPoint presentation. So if we could get that up on the camera. There we go. So the main thing is how to join those binding ends, right? Of course, we're not going to start at the end. We're going to start at the beginning, but that is the goal, is to have that join look beautiful and visible and also make it achievable for you. So let's go to the next slide and see how you start. Well, before we do that, I know many of you are waiting for today's mega giveaway winner, and we will definitely announce that at the end of the program. And that will be our last giveaway from the mega giveaway. And the winner today is going to, oh, I see we don't have a microphone, huh? That's a little bit of a problem. Okay, so, I think we're in good shape now. And if you just bear with me a minute, I reach over and pull this up here so I can actually access what I need to access. All right, here we go. So now we will just advance through this slide. So this is the prize for today, which is a copy of Perfect Stitch Viewer and also the Weightless Quilter Tabletop. Now, no surprise there that I'm going to use the Weightless Quilter Tabletop to apply the binding on my quilt. So wait till you see how that goes. Let's see. Let's get the comments up here. All right, good to see all of our good friends here, and we appreciate you bearing with us. And let's see. We have Singrid from Germany. Thank you for joining us. Anne up in Indianapolis, and Jackie Burke. So hello to you. Martha in Plano, Texas. Well, goodness, we're practically neighbors. We're right here in North Dallas. So. And Retha, thanks for joining us today. She was the first person to sign in. I think she's the first person 99% of the time. So thanks for joining us again. So Ann Philbeck, you want to know, will the join be in the hoop? No, it will not be in the hoop. We are going to do this the traditional way. The reason why we had the hoop in the image for the promo is because, of course, I quilted my quilt in my Snap Hoop Monster. And then I'm going to move to the regular sewing features of my embroidery sewing machine. Okay, let's see. Oh, and Patty Post-Roberts, she is binding a quilt right now. Congratulations. So hopefully, it sounds like maybe you're ahead of schedule. Of course, graduations here in Texas start in about another week or two. Okay, so here you have your quilt. You've poured your heart into it, and it looks like the image on the screen there, right? The batting is extending beyond the quilt top. And the quilt top itself may not be perfectly square at this point because you've applied a lot of quilting. And so take the time to square off the quilt. Use a quilter's ruler and measure the top, the center, and the bottom, and find that the number that is the smallest, and then that's the size that you'll trim your quilt. And that's important. Now, the next step is to, let's see, the next step is to determine how much binding you're going to need. So, you can kind of look at the quilt and guess, or you could do a little bit of math, and it's not that hard. So you're going to take the measurement of the length and the width of the quilt and add them together. So here I have a 36 by 46 inch quilt, which is kind of a weird size, right? And that equals together 82 inches. And then I'll multiply that by 2 because there's 2 sides and 2 lengths, right? So that gives me 164 inches. Then I divide the 164 inches by 40 inches, and that's the width of my binding strips. And we cut that with the fabric, and I cut my binding 2.5 inch strips. Now, some people use 2 inches, some people use 2.25, but my preference, and just traditionally, I have always gone to 2.5. It's very forgiving. It might be a little wide for many of you, but I have results with it. So, okay, and then you're going to take your binding fabric and cut those strips. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. Oh, okay, let's back up a little bit. All right, so here I have my width of fabric and I'm cutting 2.5 inch strips. I'll use a quilter's ruler. Maybe you fold your fabric in half depending on your cutting table that you're working on. And if you do that, you have to be careful for that fold. And let's go to the overhead cam and I'll show you what I mean. So we don't have an overhead cam. Oh, we don't have an overhead cam. Okay, so I could just kind of hold it up. And let me get a board so you can see this a little bit better. Okay, so one of my issues is, we could just go to maybe full face cam. So you see, when you cut on with the fabric folded, you may wind up with a strip like this. That's very frustrating. So best to tear the fabric first at the top, at one edge of your fabric, and then fold in that fashion, aligning that torn edge, which is nice and straight, with the other side because it's folded, and then you won't have this swayed, curved thing. Okay, so then we're going to take our strips and so we're short of camera, guys, folks, for watching. So what I think I'm going to do is maybe go over to the needle cam because you can probably see that really well. And I'll just take can I do that? Is that all right? Okay, so Roy, could you maybe give us the needle cam so we can see this fabric? Maybe get that up on screen. Okay, so there you go. So now I have my 2 strips. My 2, I need to have 5, but I have my 2. And then I'm going to place them perpendicular to each other in this fashion. And I'm going to sew from this point to this point. And when I do that, I then am able to fold this back because that's where my seam will be, right? That'll be sewn. And I have a nice long strip. And my seam is not, in a vertical position so that when I go to do all those folds, which is what binding is all about, I won't have all that excess bulk. The seam allowances will be scattered over this long width of fabric instead of just straight up and down. And here I can show you exactly what I mean by that. I have a little piece here to show you that I've already stitched. And here you can see this is stitched. So when I open that up, it's nice and flat. So what I would do at this point is I would take my iron and press that down because that sets the stitches. And then I open up the seam allowances, and I do that before I actually trim the seam allowances. So I have a little iron over here, and I'll just do that off camera so you can take a look at what I mean. There we go. I'll pin this in place so I can free up a hand. All right. And so now you can see how this is done. And now I just lift that seam allowance with nice sharp scissors and slice it away. And you know, at this point, it's okay with me if it's not a perfect 1/4 inch, doesn't matter. You know, that's going to be inside binding, no one's ever going to see it. And then I'm going to trim off those little dog ears, right? And then there's my binding, that's my seam, perfect. Then we'll go back to the iron and we fold this in half and we press it in half like that. So let's go ahead and do that quickly so that you really get a good idea of what this is going to look like. And here you have, you know, your folded strip. So it has the raw edges aligned on one side, and then of course that's my fold. So the next step is to add that to the quilt. But before we do that, we have some other things to do. So let me see what kind of cameras we have going here and how I can actually make this happen so you can see what I'm doing. Let's just check it out. Okay, so stay here. No, okay. All right, so what we're going to do next is one thing we want to make sure is that when we add our binding to our quilt, we want to make sure that that seam that I just showed you is not at a corner of the quilt. If we have that seam at the corner, let me find that. Here we go. So if we have that seam at the corner, you know, as we travel around our quilt, that you'll get so much bulk in there, it'll just be a hot mess. So make sure before you decide where to start the binding that you put the binding around the whole quilt just by hand and make sure no seams are going to hit the corners, and then position it accordingly. Okay, so I have my weightless quilter attached to the machine, or not to the table, I should say. So maybe you're wondering, what is that weightless quilter? If we could get a wide shot, that would be really helpful. Roy, can we get a wide shot of where the weightless quilter is showing? Okay, so here you could see this weightless quilter is extending above the machine bed, right? It's clamped to my table and it's holding my small quilt. This is only 45 inches square on purpose. If I was doing a big quilt, I would use my regular weightless quilter, but this tabletop is so handy. So then I have taken my binding and, you know, the whole length of it, and I wound it onto a spool. And then I have another weightless quilter clamp here in front of me. And I am holding this pole, just this, you know, small dowel in that weightless quilter clamp, and it's going to hold on to that post. And I'm going to put my spool of ribbon on there, not ribbon, but binding. And then I know that it's going to be just flow so nicely. Okay, so I have measured my binding to ensure that no corner is going to hit, no seam is going to hit a corner. So that's why this little binder clip is in that position. And then I've marked about 12 inches of length of the binding. And I'm going to leave that nice long tail. And I'm going to start my binding where I marked it. And, you know, it's in position. And then next up, we just slide this underneath the foot. Now I have a 1/4 inch foot attached to the machine, and I'm going to lower that presser foot, and I'm just going to start sewing. And meanwhile, that binding will just roll right off of that spool. And I'm sorry that you can't see it, but boy, is it handy, I can tell you that. So I'm going to make my way down to the corner, and I just want you to notice how comfortable this is for me. I don't have to pay any attention to the quilt because the weightless quilter is holding that in place, and I'm just focusing on my stitching, which for me is important, right? Now I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch away from the edge of my quilt, And there's a couple ways you can do this. Many feet have a little mark on the foot that is a 1/4 inch in front of the needle. And when your edge of the fabric, this edge, hits that point, then it's time to lift the presser foot, rotate that quilt so that you are stitching off right up at a 45-degree angle right off the quilt. And then you'll lock those stitches and lift the presser foot. And then we're going to fold back our binding. And just, do this in a controlled fashion. And don't rush this part, because this degree here, this fold, is what's going to give you nice, crisp corners. So take the time to do it right. You might even find that placing a pin at this edge, just holding it, gives you something to wrap that length of binding around, so it's right at the edge of the quilt. And then, even though I don't pin or anything like that, I do clip this right there. That way I don't have to worry about it as I travel around. Now I have to rotate my quilt, right? Because I'm going to stitch right where that clip is, but that's okay. That's fine. It's holding it in place. I could move that clip. That's probably a good idea a little bit. And then we're going to get that corner under there, and then I remove it and make sure that I'm catching the edge. Come on. And then we stitch. Now, I'll take a couple stitches, about 1 inch or 2, and then I'm going to focus on my quilt here. So, I'm getting a little tight. So I could just release this and move that quilt over to this position. And there's no harm in standing up a little bit and repositioning this one. Okay, and maybe you push them out of the way, you push them back, pull them down, whatever it is that you need to do with the weightless quilter at this point. And then we'll just stitch. And we're going to go to the next corner, and then I'm going to show you how to join them. I have a smaller piece that I could show you, so you don't have to watch me just stitch all around the corner. But I am using a 1/4 inch foot, and you'll notice that the edge of the quilt is running right along the guide. There's a fabric guide at the bottom of that foot. That is so handy. And that way I don't really have to concentrate on the stitching. I could just make sure that I'm pushing the fabric against that fabric guide, and that the raw edge of my binding is aligned with the quilt edge itself. And just, carry on, right? You can stitch at whatever speed you're comfortable with. I kind of have this set at a medium stitch length because I'm on camera. At home, I would probably have this a lot faster. But, you have to be careful what I do on camera, because goodness knows what I'm actually going to do on camera. We have the best intentions, and it doesn't always turn out that way. Okay, so let's see. We're getting close. I usually really do slow down here because I want to make sure that that mark on my foot is going to be aligned with the edge of the quilt. And maybe one more, and then lift that presser foot, rotate so that I'm at 90 degrees, and I'm going to go just right off that corner. Okay, I'm going to cut that. Now this time I'm going to bring this up to the camera just in case this might be something new to you. And so I have stitched in my 1/4 inch here, and then when I'm a 1/4 inch away from the edge of the quilt, I stitch off the corner. And then we take the time to fold this back, and we want that to be at a 90-degree angle, right? Just perfect like that. And then pull it down, clip it to secure it while you get it back underneath the foot and continue stitching. All right, let's see. And we'll lower that presser foot and off we go. Okay, so I would continue around the other 2 corners. I would maybe reposition my quilt on the weightless quilter. I could do that right here. I can pull it down towards me so I don't have to get up. I could, but it's so handy like that. So let's see. Mary Haig, you say your walking foot doesn't have a 1/4 inch plate. Any work around there? Your walking foot doesn't have, well, yeah. Well, see if you can buy one that has that. And let me cut this thread so I can show you exactly what we're talking about. That fabric guide is really, really handy. It most certainly is. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that fabric guide. That's this black piece of metal that my quilt actually sits right against and really controls the side edge. Another thing you could do is you could take a stack of Post-it notes, believe it or not, and position that a 1/4 inch away from the needle. And that gives you a barrier, right? A wall to push against. Let me see if I have a set of Post-it notes here. I probably did yesterday, and do I have one today? Probably not, but anyway, you know what I mean, and I'm not the first person to tell you that, but it really does work. That's a really great thing to do. And Dawn, you say another foot you need now. The clip you're using looks like it's much larger than the ones I have seen. No, Cheryl Johnson, no, we don't sell these clips. These clips can be found in multiple sizes. I have them. This is the medium size. There's a smaller red size. There's even a mini size that's smaller than that. And then there's one that's larger. That's about, I would say maybe 3 inches. This is my favorite size for my hands. This is my favorite size. I just love this. I have more of these. The big ones are sometimes handy for some tote bags, heavy things that you're stitching. These little ones, it can also be handy, but this is my favorite size, the size I use all the time. And so no, we don't sell them, but they're a great thing. You can find them in lots of places. Okay, now that we did that, and now I have to show you how to do the join. And we don't have an overhead cam. So we got to kind of wing this, girls. We have to kind of wing this. All right, let's see if we can do this nice and tight at the machine. So I'm going to remove that quilt. Just kind of get it out of harm's way. Not that it's harming anything. And just get it out of sight. And then I have one that I had, prepared for you to show you underneath the camera on the overhead camera, but like I said, we're having technical difficulties, so not a great day for that. Okay. I've already attached the binding to, almost this complete quilt, right? I've done all my corners, and I have it attached all the way back here, which is probably a little too far. So I think I will put this underneath the needle and get my foot back on there and stitch just a little bit more so that we can see how this is going to be bound. And this foot is nice. It just clips right on. Isn't that handy? All right. And we will align that edge with the fabric guide. And then we'll just sew. And I just want to get past this seam so that it's secured. We don't have to worry about it. All right. So see how I have to really push the fabric because I don't have it attached to the Weightless Quilter? Imagine if that was up attached to the Weightless Quilter. I wouldn't have to force it. But anyway, just to show you. Okay. So now let's go ahead and take this quilt. And I want to show you the open space that we have. So I'm going to lay my original end. So let's call this end number 1 or tail number 1, right? So when I started to apply my binding, I left a good 10, maybe 12 inches of tail. And I'll just leave that and align it with the edge of the quilt. And then I'm going to take this edge of the binding and overlap it, just lay it right on top. Nice and smooth. We're not really tugging, we're not stretching anything. And then I'm going to fold this back, this binding tail, so that it meets that cut edge. So here's my fold and here's my cut edge, and they're just meeting right there. And then I'm going to take a piece of fabric, which is 2.5 inches, which is the same width of my binding strip. Remember, I cut my binding strips 2.5 inches. So I take this, and this is a scrap that I just keep in my drawer at my sewing machine because this is the size I always use. And then this tells me what side, where to cut the excess off this tail. Because here you can see this is all excess, right? We don't need that. So I can cut right on that line, or I could scooch this down just a little bit, not even a whole 1/4 inch, but just a little bit so it's smaller than 2.5 inches. And I'm going to snip that fabric right there. And I'm only cutting one layer, the tail, right? So I just have this, and that's excess. Save these scraps. You can use them to make scrappy binding, which is an awful lot of fun. And then save this, keep this in your drawer. If this is something that the size that you always use, then you can use a ruler, but goodness, that's so nice and easy. Okay, so now we're going to take tail number 1, and we're going to open up that binding strip. Goodness, that was challenging. That was harder than anything. Okay, we're going to open that up, and then we're going to open up the other side and place these perpendicular to each other. Now you have to, it's a little awkward, right? Because it's shorter than the space that they're connected between. Now here, we want to make sure that the edge of this binding is aligned with that edge. And, we're just squaring that up, right? And then if you're not sure what direction to stitch in, and sometimes, I tell you, I often get this wrong. I have to do it a couple times. And then you can, open it up like this and see, oh yeah, that looks right, okay? So we're going to stitch from this corner to that corner. And like I said, it's a little awkward. We want to keep everything aligned. And I'm going to take this out of the foot area, the sewing area, and bring that binding underneath the needle and just try to smooth that as best you can. And then we're going to sew. I'm going to put that, and now on this machine, there's a laser that I could use, a red alignment guide. It's not really a laser because lasers burn. But I just want to make sure I'm just going to do a nice straight line right to that other corner. And, truth be told, I most certainly don't need the 1/4 inch foot for this portion, but no need to really change it. Okay, so then now you see, right, we have a nice join, but we do have an awful lot of excess fabric in here. So again, I'm going to bring my iron over, and I can do that right here. I have everything handy. And a little pad here. So I'm just going to take that seam that I just stitched and set that seam, press that a little bit, and then we'll press it open. Okay. And we're going to press that open nice and flat, and then I'm going to trim those seam allowances just like I did in the sample earlier. Okay, that's all nice and set. And then we're going to trim those seam allowances. And so easy, right? Okay, beautiful. And now, yes, we most certainly could press that fold again, but it's not really necessary. Get rid of that pressing pad, and let me get this all situated here. And then we would just take the time to sew it down all the way around. So let me see. Diane, you say that my voice is so soothing. God bless you. Because I don't feel very soothed right now. I can tell you that. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about some ways to finish it, right? So there's, now I change my foot, and I'm going to put on a stitch in the ditch foot. So now this time, that fabric guide is in the center of the foot. And that's really quite handy because I'm going to use that as an alignment for the seam. You'll see what I mean in a minute. Okay, so there's several ways to do this. First, I'm going to show you this way, where you just finger press your binding flat open and finger press it all the way down that seam, and you'll do it the whole length. And then, so this is fast and easy. This is something you can do right at the machine. You're not even going to get up to your ironing board. And then you're going to place that place the binding underneath the foot. And I'm just feeling this, no pins. I could clip it, I could pin it, and I'm going to stitch right in that ditch. And I am making sure that the ditch where the seams meet, where the seam meets, is right underneath that fabric guide. And by doing this, I'm catching on the wrong side. Let's hope. Let's hope. Let's lift that up and see. And yeah, I've caught my binding right there on the back. So I've caught it. And I could go all the way around the quilt like that. But many of you traditionally probably press that open. And maybe we can do that here kind of quickly, see how that would work out. And, you know, traditionally we would press this so that it is nice and flat. And I'm just going to do this on a little bit. And then pin it, right? Or maybe clip it. If you have a lot of these clips, maybe you would do that. Another fast and easy way to get that in position is to also add Elmer's glue. So let's see. Elmer's glue, regular schoolhouse glue. So when I do that, I press from the back also. I have already pressed from the front, and that's a lot of pressing for sure. So I'll just show you. I got to move a cord over here because I'm strangling myself. Okay, let's see. So I can press in this fashion, and now that just flattens down that seam allowance, right? And then I take my Elmer's glue, and I'm just going to run a bead of Elmer's glue right down this seam allowance. And really not a whole lot, just a skinny little bead. So in fact, this up here is too much. I mean, it's going to be fine, but you just need a skinny little bead. And then you bring this, wrap this around, just wrap that around. And lo and behold, with a little iron, it's going to stay in place. So you can do all of this, the entire quilt, pull it to the back with a little Elmer's glue, all at one time at the ironing board. You don't have to worry about running out of clips or pins or whatever it is that you like to do. But that's a traditional way that I often do it. That Elmer's glue will dissolve when you wash it, and it's soft and pliable. It doesn't bleed. It's not hard. It's just great. So there you have it. Isn't that awesome? Okay. So what else did I want to? Oh, and I do have another really down and dirty technique that if you don't want to go to all this trouble of like creating binding with folds and all of that. Many years ago, I wrote a book called, I don't know what it was called, Machine Applique or something, but look at this beautiful sample. How fun is that? Let's take a look at that binding at the top. So you see we have two different colors. It doesn't have to be two colors. It could just be one. But this binding is fused in place. It is literally just fused in place. So let's take a look at the back. As you can see, it is fused. So it's one layer. There are no folds. And it is just fused in place. So I have a sample to kind of show you how you do that. And the best thing to do first is to take a product like Fuse Me and fuse that to a strip of fabric. So cut your Fuse Me. I think this is 2 inches. Is it? Let's measure it. Nope, it's like 1.5. Close to that. And so cut your Fuse Me that length and fuse it to, about a 12-inch width of fabric, piece of fabric, and then cut your strips in the 1.5-inch width, because that will have your your fusible web adhered all the way edge to edge to the fabric. And in doing so, it stops the fraying of the fabric. And then you just take your quilt sandwich and, fuse it in place. And then you have binding. It's fast. It's kind of fun. Now, that binding on this little sample is probably too wide for this quilt block, right? It's just a simple quilt block. But if I was really going to, use this for something, I would probably make a little narrower binding. It would be more attractive. On a bigger quilt, I would use that width. But then we just fuse it down, and on the corners, you can miter them and then fuse that, and around you go. So really very fast. So let's see. Okay. Let's see what kind of questions we have. Oh, you love the wool mats. Yeah, I like the wool mats too. They are really very helpful for sure. Very, very helpful. Okay. I kind of can't get to a computer to find the comments. Maybe over here. Let's see what's happening. So, we do have some really great, this new prize, this weightless quilter. I just thought I would show you the weightless quilter. So, first, so you could see what our winner is going to get. And where did that go? Okay, so here is the product itself. This is what we ship to you. And it has 2 poles, and now they're gooseneck poles, and they are 27 inches long, I believe. Is that right? 28 inches long. They have fabric clamps and, desk clamps, and that's what will clamp to your work surface. So just to show you, here is the clamp on the end, and then we have the long coil, which you can shape to whatever shape you want. It's nice and strong. Right now in this room, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these poles around my table. 2 are holding cameras. 1 is holding a dowel for that binding, and the other 2 are holding my quilt. So we find tons of reasons to use them. So let's go ahead and take a look at some other reasons of why you would use the Weightless Quilter tabletop. Have some other reasons of why you would use the weightless quilter. So let's take a look at that. There's so many reasons. I see some of you have the Weightless Quilter tabletop and you love it. Now I see somebody said, will it work on a king size quilt? Not the Weightless Quilter tabletop. So the tabletop does small quilts. And by small quilts, we say 45 inches square. Can you still manage a 45-inch square on a, an embroidery machine or a sewing machine without the Weightless Quilter tabletop? Probably, and you've probably been doing that for years. But I'll tell you, once you have that Weightless Quilter tabletop, you'll wonder how you managed before that, because it is so handy. It is just delightful. And we use it here all the time, like I said, for sure. So let's see. Yeah, binding. Now there is another technique where you can use a fusible product like our Fuse Me to, just overlap the fabrics together and not seam them. And I did that for many years, but I found that it gets a little stiff in that joint. So I like this method. And if you've been using, making binding, maybe in some shortcut ways over the years, I encourage you to try it this way, because it will, you'll be really pleased with the results for sure. Absolutely. Okay. All right. So let's see what else is next. We always wonder, people are always asking us, what's coming next? Well, our Ashley Jones is the next one to broadcast. Her next broadcast is actually going to be on June 6th, I think, right? So let's see where we are. Here's our special. As you know, not only are we giving one away, but it is this week's special, and that's $59.99, which is really a bargain. You are going to find so many uses for the Weightless Quilter, I'll tell you. So Weightless Quilter tabletop. And on orders over $75, just add a little something to your cart to get it up to $75, and we'll ship it free to you for sure. Okay, so let's see. Here's Ashley. She's going to be doing my block piecer. So on June 6th, she'll be doing piecing in the hoop, and I hope that you'll tune in and join her then. But in case you don't know how to be notified of our live episodes, this is how you do it.
In this video, we'll show you how to subscribe to a YouTube channel and follow a Facebook page through your phone. Let's start with YouTube. First, open your YouTube app on your phone. Once you're on your home page, search for the Designs in Machine Embroidery in the search bar at the top of the screen. Click on it and go to the channel page. Once on the channel page, click the subscribe button, and that's it. You're now subscribed to the channel. Now, let's move on to Facebook. First, open your Facebook app. Once on your home page, search for Designs in Machine Embroidery in the search bar at the top of the screen. Once on the profile page, click the three dots and select the follow button. And that's it. You're now following the page. Thanks for watching.
Okay, so let's see. Colleen wanted to know, she said it looks like you're using two. So when you purchase the Weightless Quilter tabletop, you do get two posts, right? Two 20-inch goosenecks posts. You get two fabric clamps and two clamps that fit on your work surface and hold it in place. So you do get two. And you might find that sometimes you're only attaching your small table runner or whatever it is to one clamp, but two is quite handy to have. And I just always leave them attached to my table. And when I'm not using them, I just kind of stand them up out of harm's way. And then someone said she uses it in tandem with her traditional weightless quilter. That's a great idea. I mean, why not? It depends on what you're working on for sure. So let me just make sure we have all these. Oh, let's see. Vanessa says that, yeah, now she needs one because it's definitely changed her mind. Oh, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. Okay, so let's see. Well, thank you, Sue, for your kind comment. Thank you for the lessons. I apologize for our technical difficulties. You can't believe how beautiful this was going to be today. We had 3 cameras, and then at 12:50, I don't know what happens, but the gremlins come into the building, but anyway, here we are, and we got it to work. So it's awesome. So let's see. I know you want to know about on the house, and you also want to know who the winner is. So let's see what's next, right? Okay. How wide do the clamps open? Oh, they open pretty wide. Yeah. I can get one, I guess. They open pretty wide. Let's see. Yep, they open like that. So pretty wide, and they're really pretty. They're strong for sure. They're strong. Okay. Now let's go to PowerPoint and take a look at what's next. On the house, so this week, some of you have posted your on the house projects, and we encourage you to do that. So let's take a look at what you've been stitching.
Here is a quick tutorial on how to use hashtags in your design post. First, on your Facebook profile page, click on the photo icon. Select the public option sharing so we can view the design once it's published. Add the image of the design you wish to share. Then add the description related to your design. Then we can go on to adding your hashtags. We suggest dime sew along, on the house, or exquisite thread. Finally, click Post.
Okay, so we could just, I don't know why PowerPoint went ahead. We didn't get to show the on the house. Look at this adorable design for this week. Deborah Jones just outdoing herself. This is a beautiful blend of pinks and deep reds to create the sunbonnet with those fun sunglasses, right? Won't that be enjoyable? Now, Suzanne Marie, you asked that can extra clamps and posts be purchased separately? No, they can't. So because, it's all, you need all the pieces, right? The post doesn't work without the base, and the fabric clamps don't work without the gooseneck. So they're sold all as one today for sure. Okay, so let's get to that winner. Okay, week 6, and the winner is, drum roll. Elizabeth Henning. Congratulations, Elizabeth Henning. I'm so happy for you. You've won not only the Weightless Quilter tabletop, but also Perfect Stitch Viewer. And Perfect Stitch Viewer turns all of your embroidery designs into, little icons, little images on your hard drive, so you can see exactly where those designs are and what they are. So congratulations to you, Elizabeth, for sure. Thank you all for joining me today and for persevering through our technical difficulties. And we'll be back next week with the On the House project, which I'm sure you'll be excited to see. And for now, I hope you have a great week and keep stitching. Thanks for joining me.